My grandmother spent her 79th birthday alone, while the family she sacrificed everything for posted vacation photos. 24 hours later, one manila folder destroyed every lie they had built. My name is Nora Caldwell, and I was 32 years old the year I learned what a single manila folder could do to a family. My grandmother, Eleanor Caldwell, turned 79 on a chilly Saturday in October. She had spent the entire week preparing. Not because anyone asked her to, because she still believed family mattered. She baked her own birthday cake, vanilla with buttercream roses, the recipe she'd perfected decades earlier. The same cake she'd made for every graduation, every wedding shower, every birthday in our family. She polished the dining room table until it shined, set out 8 plates, folded matching napkins, placed dried hydrangeas from her garden in a crystal vase, and waited. By noon, nobody had arrived. By 2 o'clock, the coffee was cold. By 4, the candles had begun to bend in the sunlight coming through the kitchen window. Still, nobody came. My parents were posting photos from a luxury ski resort in Colorado. My older brother Tyler uploaded videos laughing with friends on the slopes. My mother filled social media with captions about gratitude and blessings. Not one photo included the woman who spent 30 years helping raise their children. Not one message asked if she was okay. At 4:15 p.m., Tyler finally sent a text. "Happy birthday, Gran. Skiing is amazing." That was it. 10 words, no phone call, no apology, no promise to visit later. Just 10 words. My father didn't contact her at all, not even once. I was finishing a 12-hour hospital shift in Hartford when Grandma called. She didn't complain. She never complained. She simply asked if I was working late. Something in her voice made me drive 3 hours straight to her house without even changing clothes. When I arrived, darkness had already settled over the neighborhood. The porch light was on. The birthday banner still hung crookedly across the front window. And inside, she was sitting alone at the kitchen table. The untouched cake sat in front of her. The candles had burned completely down. The ice cream had melted into soup. For a moment, she just stared at me, like she couldn't believe someone had actually come. Then her eyes filled with tears. And that broke my heart, because nobody should ever look surprised that they're loved, especially not on their birthday. I hugged her, cut 2 slices of cake, and sang happy birthday as loudly as I could. She laughed through her tears. For a little while, things felt normal again, but the next morning changed everything. Sunday started quietly. We cleaned the kitchen together, washed dishes, packed leftovers into containers. Grandma seemed lighter somehow, as if having one person show up had saved the day. Then, around 11 o'clock, someone knocked on the front door. Actually, 2 people, a man and a woman, both dressed professionally. Neither looked familiar. Grandma froze the moment she saw them through the window. Not scared, not confused, prepared, as if she'd been expecting them. The woman asked politely, "Are you Eleanor Caldwell?" Grandma nodded. Without a word, the woman handed me a thick manila folder, sealed, labeled, and signed across the flap in my grandmother's own handwriting. My stomach tightened. "Grandma, what is this?" She looked at the folder for several long seconds. Then she smiled. Not sadly, not nervously. Satisfied, like someone finally reaching the end of a very long journey. And then she said 7 words that would destroy my family forever. It's time they learned the truth. The room went completely silent. I looked from the folder to my grandmother, then back again. My hands suddenly felt heavy. "Grandma, what truth?" She slowly pulled out a chair and sat down, the same way a person sits before delivering news they've carried for years. The man and woman introduced themselves as attorneys, not family lawyers, estate attorneys. That immediately caught my attention, because as far as I knew, Grandma wasn't wealthy. She lived in the same modest house she'd owned for 40 years. She drove a 12-year-old sedan. She clipped coupons. She reused gift bags. Nothing about her life suggested hidden wealth. Then the female attorney opened her briefcase. What she removed next made my heart stop. Property deeds, bank records, investment statements, dozens of them. The stack was almost 4 inches thick. My grandmother folded her hands. "Nora," she said softly, "everything in that folder belongs to this family." I frowned. "What do you mean?" The attorney slid the first document toward me. A commercial property downtown. Estimated value, $1.8 million. The second property? A shopping plaza. Value, over $3 million. The third? Apartment units. Several of them. By the time I reached the last page, I could barely breathe. My grandmother wasn't simply comfortable. She was worth millions, possibly tens of millions. I stared at her. "You own all this?" She nodded. "Your grandfather and I built it together." My mind raced. Nobody knew. Not my parents, not Tyler, not even me. For decades she'd hidden it, living quietly, never showing off, never mentioning any of it. Then the male attorney cleared his throat. "There is another document." He placed a sealed envelope on the table. A will, recently updated. Very recently. My stomach twisted. "Grandma!" She reached over and squeezed my hand. I waited a long time before making this decision. The attorney broke the seal. Everyone in the room became silent. The first few pages contained routine instructions, funeral wishes, personal belongings, charitable donations. Then came the final section. Beneficiaries. I expected equal shares. Maybe a division between my father, my uncle, my brother, and me. Instead, the attorney stopped, adjusted his glasses, and read the sentence aloud. "Primary heir and sole controlling beneficiary of the Caldwell estate, Nora Elizabeth Caldwell." My jaw dropped. "What?" The attorney continued reading. "80% of all assets shall transfer directly to Nora Caldwell." I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even process what I'd heard. 80%? To me? The attorney continued. "The remaining 20% shall be distributed among various charities supporting elderly care and housing assistance." My father's name wasn't mentioned. Neither was my mother's. Or Tyler's. Nobody else received anything. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The silence felt deafening. Finally, I found my voice. "Grandma, this has to be a mistake." "It isn't. But Dad made his choices. Tyler made his too." Her voice wasn't angry. That was the shocking part. She sounded calm, certain, like she'd already grieved the relationships years ago. I looked down at the documents. "Why me?" Her eyes softened. "Because while everyone else remembered me when they needed something, you remembered me when nobody was watching." The words hit harder than any slap. She continued. "You visited when there were no holidays. You called when there was no emergency. You showed up because you wanted to." Tears burned behind my eyes. "Grandma?" "For 10 years, Nora. I watched." She pointed toward the folder. Every visit, every phone call, every holiday, everything was documented. Then she opened a smaller notebook. Inside were handwritten entries stretching back nearly a decade. Dates, names, events, who visited, who called, who didn't. Page after page after page. Evidence, not assumptions. Facts. My father had visited twice in 7 years. Twice. My mother, 3 times. Tyler, once. And that visit lasted 18 minutes. 18 minutes. The attorneys had verified everything. Receipts, security logs, phone records, even holiday photographs. The pattern was undeniable. They only appeared when they wanted money. or favors, or free childcare years ago. The realization made me sick, not because of the inheritance, because Grandma had spent years quietly noticing every disappointment, every broken promise, every forgotten birthday, every canceled dinner, alone. Then she revealed the final surprise, one that made even the attorneys exchange looks. "I haven't told anyone about the new will." I blinked. "No one?" She smiled. "No one." A strange feeling settled over me, because I knew my family. And if they discovered this document, everything was about to explode. Unfortunately, they found out sooner than either of us expected. And when my father called 3 days later, screaming into the phone, the real war finally began. 3 days later, my phone rang at 6:17 in the morning. The screen showed Dad. That alone was unusual. My father rarely called me. Most communication came through short texts, usually when he needed information or a favor. The second I answered, he started yelling. "Nora, what the hell did you do?" I sat upright in bed. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play stupid with me." His voice echoed through the speaker. "You manipulated your grandmother." My stomach dropped. Somehow, he knew. I glanced at the clock. "How did you find out?" He laughed bitterly. "Because your grandmother's attorney contacted family members yesterday." Of course, certain legal notices had to be delivered. The explosion had officially started. Dad continued shouting, "You stole our inheritance." "Our inheritance?" I repeated the words carefully. "Grandma is still alive. That isn't the point." Actually, it was exactly the point. But logic wasn't welcome in that conversation. By noon, my phone had received 27 missed calls. Texts flooded in from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Cousins, aunts, second cousins, people who never visited Grandma, people who forgot her birthday. Suddenly, everyone was concerned about family. Funny how money creates affection. Tyler called next. Unlike Dad, he sounded calm. Too calm. "Nora," he said, "we should talk." That tone immediately made me suspicious, because Tyler only became polite when he wanted something. "What do you want?" A pause. Then, "Maybe Grandma isn't thinking clearly." I almost laughed. The same grandmother who managed millions of dollars for decades? The woman who remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every tax deadline? Now she wasn't thinking clearly? Interesting timing. She knows exactly what she's doing. Another pause. Then his voice hardened. "You can't seriously think this is fair." Fair. The word kept appearing. Not love, not concern, not Grandma's happiness. Fair. Meaning money, meaning inheritance, meaning themselves. I ended the call. Over the next week, things got worse. Much worse. Family members suddenly started visiting Grandma. Daily, sometimes twice a day. People arrived carrying flowers, gift baskets, homemade meals, cards. One aunt brought a blanket. Another offered to clean the house. Tyler showed up with expensive chocolates. My mother brought framed family photographs. The performance was almost impressive. If it hadn't been 10 years too late. Grandma noticed everything. One afternoon, we watched 3 relatives arrive within 30 minutes of each other, after months without contact. She shook her head. "They think I don't see it." "You do. I always did." Then she surprised me. Instead of being angry, she seemed sad. Deeply sad. Because despite everything, these were still her children, her family, people she'd loved their entire lives. But now their intentions were impossible to ignore. A week later, things crossed a line. I arrived at Grandma's house after work and found my mother sitting in the living room crying. Actual tears. The dramatic kind. The moment she saw me, she pointed. "There she is!" I stopped in the doorway. "What happened?" My mother stood dramatically. She poisoned you against us. Grandma sighed heavily. Clearly, this wasn't the first accusation. Margaret, Grandma said calmly. Stop. But Mom wasn't finished. You turned my daughter against her own family. Grandma looked directly at her. No. The room became silent. Then Grandma spoke words nobody expected. She turned toward family. Mom's face went white. The truth landed harder than any insult. Because it was true. I hadn't abandoned Grandma. Everyone else had. My mother stormed out, slamming the door behind her. That should have ended it. Instead, it triggered something worse. 2 days later, a lawsuit appeared, filed by my father and Tyler, against Grandma, against me, claiming undue influence, manipulation, financial coercion. I stared at the paperwork in disbelief. They weren't just challenging the will. They were trying to prove Grandma was incapable of making her own decisions. They wanted the court to strip away her choices completely. When I showed Grandma the documents, she read every page, then calmly handed them back. No anger, no panic, no fear, just confidence. Good, she said. I blinked. Good? A small smile appeared on her face. Yes. Why? Because they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Then she pointed toward the original manila folder sitting on her dining room table. The same folder that had started everything. The folder containing 10 years of records. 10 years of proof. 10 years of evidence showing exactly who cared. And who only showed up when money entered the conversation. And for the first time, I realized my grandmother hadn't been preparing for a birthday. She'd been preparing for a battle. And she was holding every winning card. The lawsuit moved forward faster than anyone expected. My father and Tyler were convinced they would win. After all, they had a simple argument. They claimed I had manipulated an elderly woman into changing her will. They claimed Grandma wasn't mentally competent. They claimed I had isolated her from family. The accusations sounded serious. Until the evidence appeared. The first court hearing lasted less than an hour. Grandma arrived wearing a navy blue dress and carrying the same manila folder. The one everyone had underestimated. Across the room sat my father, my mother, Tyler, and their attorney. Confident, smug, certain. Then Grandma's attorney began presenting evidence, one document at a time, 1 year at a time. Visitor logs, phone records, holiday invitations, birthday cards, medical appointment records, photographs, emails, voicemails, 10 years of documentation. The timeline told a story nobody could deny. My father ignored most holidays. Tyler rarely called. My mother visited only when she needed financial help. Meanwhile, there I was, again and again. Birthdays, hospital appointments, Sunday lunches, snowstorms, power outages, ordinary days. Not because I expected anything, because she was my grandmother. By the second hearing, the judge was visibly frustrated with my family's claims, especially after reviewing medical evaluations. 3 separate specialists confirmed Grandma was mentally sharp, perfectly capable of managing her affairs, perfectly capable of making her own decisions, perfectly capable of rewriting her will. The manipulation argument collapsed immediately. Then came the moment nobody expected. Grandma requested permission to speak. The courtroom became silent. She stood slowly, looked directly at her children, and spoke calmly. I am not punishing anyone. The room remained still. I simply decided to reward the person who showed up. No shouting, no anger, no insults, just truth. Sometimes truth hurts more than revenge ever could. My father couldn't even look at her. My mother stared at the floor. Tyler looked furious, but none of them could argue, because every fact had already been proven. A month later, the lawsuit was dismissed. Completely. The judge ruled there was no evidence of manipulation, coercion, or fraud. The will remained exactly as Grandma intended. And then something surprising happened. The inheritance stopped being the most important part of the story. Because once the money disappeared from reach, so did the relatives. The daily visits ended. The phone calls stopped. The gift baskets vanished. The concern disappeared overnight. Exactly as Grandma predicted. For a while, that realization hurt. But eventually, it became freeing. Because at least now everything was honest. No pretending. No fake affection. No hidden motives. Just reality. The following spring, Grandma asked me to take a drive with her. We visited one of the apartment buildings she'd owned for years. Families lived there. Single parents, retirees, working couples struggling to get ahead. She watched children playing outside, then handed me a set of keys. "What are these?" "Responsibility." I laughed. "That sounds terrifying." "It should." She smiled. "Money isn't important, Nora." "Then why fight for it?" "Because what it represents matters." I looked at her. She squeezed my hand. "Your grandfather and I spent our lives building something." Her eyes filled with emotion. "Not so someone could inherit it." She pointed toward the families outside. "So someone would protect it." That day I finally understood. The inheritance had never been a reward. It was trust. Trust earned through years of small choices nobody noticed. Phone calls, visits, time, kindness, consistency, the things that never appear in a bank account. 2 years later, Grandma passed away peacefully in her sleep. 91 years old. No pain, no fear, just rest. At her funeral, the church was full. Neighbors, friends, former employees, tenants, people she'd quietly helped for decades. Many shared stories I'd never heard before. Rent payments she secretly covered, scholarships she funded anonymously, medical bills she paid without taking credit. The wealthiest thing about my grandmother wasn't her money. It was her generosity. After the service, I noticed my father standing alone outside. Older, quieter, smaller somehow. For a moment, I considered walking away. Instead, I approached him. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then he finally said, "She deserved better from us." I nodded. "Yes." No excuses, no arguments, no blame, just truth. Sometimes that's all that's left. Today, years later, the family business still operates. The properties remain successful. The charitable fund Grandma created continues helping elderly people who have been forgotten by their families. And every October, on her birthday, I bake a vanilla cake with buttercream roses. Her recipe. I set 8 plates on the table, even though most seats remain empty. Then I light the candles, smile, and remember the lesson hidden inside a simple manila folder. People reveal what they value by where they spend their time. And in the end, the woman everyone ignored left behind a legacy none of them could take away.